Won't bang it hard, because otherwise the attack loss room.
We're live.
We're live?
Live.
6:30, so I'd like to call this September 12th regular meeting of council to order. The Township of Blackburn Madison acknowledges the Abitibi-Anna Senepec Nation traditional territory. We live, play, and work here together, and together we should build a strong and inclusive community. A reminder to all in attendance that council meetings are recorded and made available to the public on the township website for review, and we are live. I guess the first thing we're gonna do is, I need a mover to seconder for the agenda. Mover to seconder, I got Councilor Gattery and Councilor Neal.
Moved by Councillor Gattery and seconded by Councillor Neal that the agenda for the regular council meeting of September 12th, 2023 be approved as printed.
Yes, Councilor Down.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please add two quick items to the agenda?
Are they real super important, or are they something that can wait till the next meeting, Councilor? But I'm just asking, because our procedural bylaw says we we're supposed to do that.
Always. They're important.
Can you tell us what they are?
One is a communication policy and the other is business arising from meetings that carry forward.
As long as the mover and the seconder will consider the amendments. And, yes, Councilor Neal?
No, obviously you're asking for a motion for that.
No,
Okay.
no, just as long as you're willing to consider the amendments.
Yeah.
Yes, James?
I also have one with you.
Your report to me?
You added for the
Yeah.
report that was kind of last.
So council 9C will be the gravel report.
Communication, what kind of amendment?
Business arising.
This is what I'm gonna-
So actually, we're gonna make the communication policy, we'll make it 7C, and we'll make the business arising from meetings 7B. We'll keep it all under new business.
You're happy there, that's good.
Oh, as long as council's happy with that.
So all those in favor of the agenda as amended? Show of hands, all those in favor, carry, seeing no objections, carry. We do that, or you want to wait,
Would you rather do that later?
whatever works for you.
We can do it later.
Gotta keep doing this for a second. Is there anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none? We'll move to 4A, we got adoption of minutes. And then you move into seconder again, and Councilor Neal and Councilor Schmidt.
It was moved by Councillor Neal and seconded by Councillor Schmidt that the following minutes are hereby adopted. Minutes of a regular council meeting held August 29th, 2023. I know, I just want to see. Nope, just the 29th.
All those in favor of the resolution? Show of hands, please. Seeing no objections, carried. And the next item is our consent agenda, 5A.
So I'll need a mover and a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, mover and seconder for the consent agenda. I have Councilor Neal and Councilor Getter.
Was moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Gattery. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the September 12th, 2023 council agenda be received as the motions contained therein, be approved and recorded as listed below.
All those in favor of the resolution as read? Seeing no objections, carried. And then we get into the good part of our meeting, our delegations. We'd like, and just before we start our delegations, I'd like to apologize briefly to council because I forgot to introduce our new bylaw and soon to be building officer, Mr. LaFave. James, welcome very much to the township and thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to seeing your smiling face. And hopefully keep smiling. Thank you. And then we'll move to our delegations. I'd like to welcome the OPP Detachment Commander Renee Paye.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
And did you have something to say, Renee, or did you just want council to ask you questions?
No, yeah, you can go around with round table if anyone wants to pose any questions or have any concerns in regards to the town of Matson, then feel free. And then we can proceed with the discussion from there.
Does anybody have questions for the detachment commander? Yes, Councilor Neil.
I'm just looking as far as policing in the town. Have a lot of complaints from people in town where people are traveling at high speeds on actually like 7th Ave, 6th Ave, and then in front of the library, which has been ongoing. The police have actually been there before, which continues to be a speed area. We have kids that go to the library reading, and there's fear that eventually some little kid's gonna get hit because someone is speeding. Okay, so I'm just wondering for how many times do we have actual police presence in town for the doing any speed traps in town? I see you on the highway often, which I think is great, but just as far as any in town speed.
So in town, you can imagine the resources that we delegate to any initiative depends on public safety issues. So the highways are our highest priority because that's where you're most likely going to see fatalities and serious bodily injury to the motoring public. If there's concerns within the town of Matson, what's advised is that if, as they come in, the complaints come in, to make those complaints directly to our provincial communication center, so we can be advised of the complaint and then allocate whatever resources that we need to manage that crisis or that concern appropriately. It's all about time delivery and making sure that we have the most appropriate amount of resources. One is for police visibility, or there could be an educational portion, try to educate the public of the danger of speeding in those areas. It could be a signage issue. It could be involving with the bylaw officer to make sure that those are identified as concerned areas where tailoring may be at play or are at play. And as well, obviously, the police can be deployed for enforcement purposes. We also have items on the OVP where we call them focus patrol. So we actually have a dedicated set of officers that attend those areas and actually do those enforcements for those purposes. Right now, we have one near the school, right on Main Street, and we also have one on North Road, because we've received complaints from the community about the Mennonite school that's nearby and excess speeding on the 50-kilometer zone. So we're trying to get our officers engaged and be in those proactive areas to one, curb the habit of people speeding near children or people going to school, and two, and if there's an enforceable action, that will take appropriate measures to make sure that they curb that. So if there's any complaints time specific, then we need to know those times so we can actually allocate those resources at peak times to get maximum results.
Just to follow up if I can. The other one, I just a question. So my neighbors have grandchildren that go to the elementary school here in town. And there's been a person who's been a repeat offender when the school buses actually have lights on going past. If they take video of that, is that admissible as far as a fine for that person? If it's
We would investigate first, and before finding any guilt or any reasonable grounds, we'd have the officer investigate, view the videos, take statements from the school bus driver or anybody else that may have witnessed the infraction. And then depending if we can identify the driver and the vehicle involved, then we can leverage charges.
I know the driver has been identified as one of the, as a mine worker in the area.
Yeah, we can lay charges depending on the evidence that's gathered.
Okay.
At the time, yeah. But any of those incidents, we strongly recommend that the call be done at the time of the occurrence.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Got any, Councilor Gadry?
That was my question.
Okay, Councilor Smith,
None for me, thank you.
you want to ask about texting?
While driving, never.
This case will be fine.
Councilor Bannon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess Keith asked a question on behalf of us from our meeting last week for North Road. The other question is the social media frenzy about the condition of the old detachment. Is that still under your control?
That falls under CBRE at this time, and it was made aware of some of the conditions, including the condition of the lawn, but I can see I went by today and it was freshly cut. So we have the manager that takes care of the building, so I've made them aware of some of the conditions and some of the concerns, and they'll try to do their best to keep it maintained and make it look appropriate for the community, and that doesn't become an eyesore. I think that was the biggest concern.
Yes,
Not mine, but
Yeah, the flag should be taken down.
We can take care of that.
Yeah, because the lot of data one.
was there anything else you wanted to say? Chris, was that or the questions you had since Renee's here?
No, I mean, Renee,
I know you've had lots of
fairly
conversations.
regularly, so.
No, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be included. If you have any concerns that arise through any meetings or from your constituents, please let me know immediately. The faster we can get onto any one problem, the quicker results we can get, and we can monitor whatever concerns that may arise, either whether it's a speeding concern or suspicious person or any criminal activity within your community. We'd like to know about it forthwith so we can allocate those resources. I'm happy to say, even with, I know there were some concerns with the recent closure of the detachment, we do have a significant presence within the area. It's been noted on our highways. Those are the biggest concerns that affect your community right now, or traffic related concerns. And we're proactive in all those approaches. Throughout the Northeast region, we have one of the highest level of stops per capita in your area in regards to stopping motor vehicles for speeding and various infractions. We have several DRE officers that can detect impaired by drugs as well as alcohol, and they're very diligent in that aspect of patrolling your streets.
Renee, oh yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Pai, I can remember back in the day, there was some sporadic reporting being done to the municipality. So there was some reports that were submitted based on cases or based on speeding or based on drug use. Is that something that can be resumed, or was that just like a one-time?
No, through the PSB reports, we can provide some information to the mayor and council. And so we can engage in, I spoke to Chris not too long ago, and we'll give you each a quarter report. So right now we're in the third quarter, so I'm drafting up that report as we speak. We're just putting numbers together, and then I can email those to Chris for your viewing pleasure. And then if you have any concerns that come out of those reports, then we can engage at that point.
One question, I took my tongue on the last. Wasn't real important. I'm just glad that you're here and glad that you're willing to work with Chris and council. And Cassandra, of course, I mean, all the staff, but I mean, working with the community is important, and I think I've made that pretty clear a couple of times. And I might try not to be too hard on you, but do appreciate you taking the time to come and visit us.
I'm happy to be here.
Council. Yes, Chris?
Just one question for the sergeant, and maybe he doesn't have all the information, but I did get correspondence from the Solgen about the police services board being approved. And so we're waiting for the next reiteration as to actually putting it together, which is going to allow a conduit for us to have some questions and input and whatnot. I think the monthly reporting or the quarterly reporting is actually part of that. So do you have any idea, Renee, when that might happen, or?
I don't have a specific timeline. It's still in the works, but that's all part of the police services board that we're looking to engage with our communities. So we can identify problems that affect the communities and then address them appropriately. And it just opens that conduit of communication so we can better address issues and allocate resources appropriately. There's nothing worse than us saying we're going to send officers to patrol an area where there's no perceived problems, or there's actually no need for police to be there, while another part of the community might be suffering from mental health, addictions, traffic issues, loitering, you name it, trespassing, alcohol. At least we can actually funnel those resources appropriately to have a bigger impact on your community.
Are we gonna be having more meetings like we had up in Monteith that time? I forget what it was actually called, but it was kind of regional detachment meeting.
Well, through the PSB, we will be, yeah.
Okay. They're gonna be scheduled, planned, or just,
As soon as we get the boards up and running, we'll be able to engage and plan those well ahead of time. Then we'll know whether they're monthly, bi-monthly, or even quarterly. We'll be able to set those stages or set those dates in advance, schedule them, and have our topics of discussion, similar to what you do with council.
good. Anybody else from council have anything further to add or ask? No further comments? Well, thank you very much, Sergeant Payne. Much appreciated. You're more than welcome If you want to stay, you're more than welcome. If you want to get up and go, because I know you're also a busy fellow, you're more than welcome to do that.
If it's just regular council, I'll.
Just regular council and
And if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to just give me a call.
we know how to find you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
very
to
much.
see you again.
Good to see you.
Have a good night. So then we'll move into new business. And I guess our first new business is going to be our summary. I need a mover and a seconder for this for a resolution again for this summary report on our bridges and so on and so forth. I got Councilor Schmidt, Councilor Gannon.
Was moved by Councillor Schmidt, seconded by Councillor Gattery, that council received the 2023 condition assessment of bridges and culverts reports as information. As information.
And is there any questions regarding the resolution? If not, then yes, Councilor Bennett.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I have a question regarding the report.
Or for Director Musso.
Whoever can answer it. In there, it indicates under the engineering firm Kreskin, traffic control is 0 versus 90 with the other firm.
Yes,
I'm just curious why.
they're more collaborative in their approach with us, so we can use our equipment, our guys, whereas the $10,000 figure that was applied with McIntosh Perry was bringing flank deep in for a subcontractor. So we still have our costs, they do with their operational costs.
So it still costs us. Like,
Yes, under the regular costs, there's no addition.
okay, so it's not a savings though, right? If either we pay them 10,000 or we hire this other firm and we do it ourselves, there's still no savings.
It's not gonna cost us $10,000 to do it.
No.
We have our guys. We have all the equipment, we bring in a contractor, it's charging $65 an hour, so our guys send them. We're paying our guys their rate. And our costs are, we're paying the minimums, right? So the savings is the 10 grand that's going to be on top of those costs we're paying anyways, if they're coming in with 13.
We have a resolution on the floor that has been read. So I'll ask for a show of hands, all those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. And just in regards to the report. Sure, I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I was just, I went through it briefly, and I was skimmed through it. I mean, I was trying to understand everything, and obviously, James, like I don't have the actual listing of which bridge or which culvert is where. I don't know if I missed something, it looks like most of our bridges need lots of maintenance.
Yes.
But and I know we have one bridge right now that's been closed or removed.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry,
I forgot to ask the mover and seconder of the question first.
would you just finish carrying it?
Well, I know, I was just gonna ask him, I know it's carried, but I just wanted to ask him a couple questions.
It shouldn't have been, it's a procedural matter though, once you have carried a
Okay.
motion, then you're done asking
That's good.
questions. If there's,
No, actually, it's information that I can get from James later anyway. Fine,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah, the motion.
That's good. Anyway, I'll get my answers later on, James. Thanks. So we'll move along and the next item. I guess is item under new business is 7B. In regards to the beer fest memo.
Mhm.
And I have another resolution. I'm gonna move in a seconder again regarding the resolution. Mover and seconder for the next resolution for the beer fest. Councilor Schmidt. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Gabbard.
Was moved by Councillor Schmidt, seconded by Councillor Gattery, that council received the Octabeer 2023 festival sponsor letter as information. And that council received memo EAM 2023-005 as information. And finally, that council provided sponsorship to the event in the amount of, we left it blank.
I'm sure everybody has reviewed the memo regarding what the request is. And Councilor Bennett.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, Couple quick questions, but we have a budget amount of $6,500 for this, for community events. How much have we spent? Where are we in that budget?
Yes, Council.
None,
We've spent none?
you've spent none.
Okay. Second question, it says here that this is for an event that is inclusive to all residents, which a beer festival is not inclusive to all residents. It's only inclusive to
Age of majority.
age majority, so not inclusive to young children.
It's
So-
nature, that's the nature of the event, you're correct.
Yeah, so, but my question is, did we not set a policy that we had to have our request for donations in by a certain date in our
Yes, Pat?
budget?
So in your grants to organization policy, the section where a request has to come in by a certain date is for the utility rebate. When it comes, because these sometimes, and you can appreciate Councillor Diamond, you don't know a specific time in the year if you're gonna have an event. So the policy doesn't state that for these types of community events, there's a deadline. However, conditions based on council's wishes and is you can ask for financial statements. You can ask that, okay, we'll provide you the sponsorship, but then after the event, we want to see your profit or your loss. But there's not a specific timeline that has to be met to put in this request, only for the utility rebate.
Thanks for the question, thanks for the answer. Councilor Schmidt?
Did we sponsor them last week?
Yes, Pat, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, no, that's
Thank you,
good.
Mr. Mayor.
So if I can, yes, so I want to say the event has taken place over the last 2 years. The last 2 years, council did sponsor them. They didn't pick a package. They just gave them a set amount because they did not want the township logo advertised at the beer festival. They didn't want to be this perception that the municipality was promoting alcohol.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I know what the sponsorship amount was for the last 2 years?
$1,000.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Any further questions regarding the resolution? And does anybody want to make a suggestion as to an amount to put on the resolution before we actually vote on it? No, no one wants to suggest. I got, who's the second, Councilor Smith, Councilor Gathering. Either one of you want to suggest an amount for the event?
I would probably the same amount we've been donating before.
So $1,000. All right, $1,000 is recorded on the resolution and. Yeah.
I read the resolution. I
Okay.
can reread the
Just
resolution.
as amended, please.
No problem. Moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Gadry that council received the Octavir 2023 Festival sponsor letter as information. And that council received memo EAM 2023 005 as information. And finally, that council provide a sponsorship to the event in the amount of $1,000.
Yes, Councilor.
So we're just before we make a vote, from previous beer fest, when they've done this. Has there been any incidents because of the beer stock or beer fest? Any derogatory incidents that has it been well done? Has it been
I can't, I've heard nothing but all allow Cass, because she's usually got her ear tuned to these kind of things.
Well, so from the municipal perspective, we never heard anything negative. I was also a resident that attended and it was very well organized and nothing but positive things.
all right?
And if you don't mind, Council Hanjiga, I think you volunteered at these events. Do you mind just commenting?
So I, to the mayor, so I volunteered last year at the 2022 event. It was very well organized. They were very strict on boundaries and codes. They actually put me at one of the doors and Jeff, who was organizing the event, he actually went around and checked to make sure that we're keeping up, making sure that people are staying within boundaries. Perfect.
So even though it is an alcohol type event, an age majority event, it's one of those, at least they're looking after it well, from what I'm hearing. Yes, Chris.
Council might want to know that alcohol gaming, which is connected with the OPP, they will actually send plainclothes officers to these events. The check and they will try to curb you. So they will pretend to be inebriated when they're not, to see if they will let them in. They will pretend to be inebriated to see if somebody will continue to serve them. So all the things that you would think would be unhealthy behaviors of an event like that, the OPP usually are there. They don't come every time. And if they do find events by experiences, they will come to whoever the event is, to try and help them out, right? So I mean, the obvious thing is to have a safe event.
Yeah.
Okay, no further questions on the resolution. I'll ask, call for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution as read? Show of hands. Seeing no objection, carried. Thank you very much, council. I mean, I was gonna make a couple of comments, but I didn't wanna sway anybody, but my own thoughts were, it is nice to see somebody volunteering and putting events together for those that are interested. It's not for everybody, obviously, and it's one of those events that can't be for everybody, but at least it is something for the adults.
So, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you. So it's now the addition 7C, that's the communications policy from Councillor Dunn.
I'm assuming it's just a verbal policy, Councilor Dunn, or regards to.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a question, and I know you're probably gonna want me to take this into close, but I'm just wondering if there has been some talk as to limiting discussion between employees and council members. Because I heard a rumor about that, and I didn't know if that was true.
I'm not 100% sure what that could allude to. I've heard nothing about that.
Okay, well, I'd heard from that council is not to speak to members of Public Works.
I don't
I don't know if that was.
Chris, did you
I
want
don't
to?
know where that's coming. Because that's absolutely false.
Okay, that's just my question. I didn't know if you had put a policy in place that.
No, we, Counselor, we wouldn't do that. We would wish that. So right now, for example, talk about our unionized. Right? So we are in negotiations, right? In fact, we're going to be entering into conciliation. It would be inappropriate for those members and probably an unfair labor practice for them to approach council members while this is going on. After that's done away with.
Regarding the negotiation
Yes.
or HR.
Yes, after that's done away with, then of course, if they're ratepayers too, and if they have ratepayer issue, if they want to talk to council, they should do that. If it's an employment related issue, then that's sort of where the line is right there, so. And sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between the two things, but I think at the end of the day, we can work it out.
Oh, fair enough.
Just on the communications issue too, I wasn't quite sure where you were going, so I got a little ahead of myself. We do have a communications policy. I've emailed it to everybody to have a look at it.
Yeah.
It's pretty extensive, and probably
Very
needs to have a relook at it in terms of its content.
It's very expensive. Does that answer your question, Councilman?
Mhm.
All right, very good. Thank you. Well, I move along. So 7D.
Yeah, who's Councillor Dunn? So that's the business arising from meetings. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is rising from the meeting.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we discuss, let's say 2 meetings ago, I had asked for staff to look into a third-party HR. How do we carry that forward? Because that goes into our notes, but it just gets lost in the paperwork. So at what point do we bring it back, or is there a time limit that 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 10 meetings, like? We have a business arising from closed section, but we never have something on this agenda about the items we discussed last agenda.
Yes.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, in relation to that, we can talk about that particular item closed. Generally, though, if we want to talk about open meeting items and how they're coming back to council, so we can look at that a few ways. So through our iCompass program, which is where we generate the agendas and the minutes, we have an action item list. So what could start to happen is through the clerk treasurer's monthly report, we start attaching the action item list. So at least it can be tracked that way as what's to come back to council.
Mhm.
If that would appease council, we can start that process.
Yeah.
And then work on that together, but at least we'd have a constant list of items that still need to come back to you, so you can track them that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Work?
Yeah.
And in relation to the first item you brought up, we'll talk about that closed.
All right, so then we're gonna move into reports then. We've got report 9A, it's our CAO report regarding the master plan update. We got a resolution.
Yes,
I might as well get a mover and a seconder for that before we actually discuss the report. A mover and a seconder for the resolution, Councillor Gadri and Councillor Neil.
it was moved by Councillor Gadri, seconded by Councillor Neil, that council acknowledge and receive report CAO 2023-04 as information. And that council consider the draft action plan and make any changes necessary And finally, that council directs staff to finalize the master plan and return it to council for approval. Yes, no, yes.
Is there any questions regarding the resolution or questions to the CAO regarding his report? I'm assuming everybody's read the report fairly thoroughly, and I know I've read through it, and I think everything is pretty straightforward and makes sense, but if there's no questions or no concerns from council, I'll call for a vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution, show of hands, please. Seeing no objections, carried. Item B, right? So then we go into 9B, and it's a key card and camera security modernization report.
Yes, I do.
Mover and seconder. Again, please, for the resolution. Maybe Councillor Neil. And Councillor Schmidt. Thank you.
It was moved by Councillor Neil and seconded by Councillor Schmidt that council acknowledges the receipt of report EA-OT-2023-006 as information. And that council instructs staff to implement option 1 and carry out the recommended key card security and CCTV camera installations at the Burn Miller Community Center and the administration office. And finally, that council approve of funding the amount of $14,667.67 through the ICIP COVID infrastructure grant and $13,197.71 from the budget.
Yes, Councillor Neil.
So both prices here, one is for the arena. Again, is that just updating their current security issue matters they have there now? Is there presently a camera at the arena? Does anybody know?
Andy, yeah, you might as well speak that.
Through the mayor. So they have one camera right now, it's in the fitness center. I think there's one at the games, I'm not 100% sure, but it's outdated and the system that it's relying on is no longer supported. So there's going to be more and more issues going on.
So this is just a thought, my personal feeling. So I haven't really got problems because again, we have children that are in the arena. So for safety's sake, I would be in favor of that. As far as as far as here, right now, I think that should be budgeted for next year. If we can use the COVID infrastructure grant, just take care of the arena, I'd be in favor of that. I think, but for here, it's going to incur any extra cost to the budget. I'd rather defer that to next year and increase it in next year's budget.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. Yes, Cass, can you speak that?
I can, so it's just to clarify to council. So remember how we've mentioned some grants are very conditional?
Mhm.
So the grant is strictly for this building. Which is why the portion for the municipal office would be covered by the grant, but the portion for the arena would be then ran through the budget. The grant is only for the office.
So more of the controls and yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Gatter.
Yeah, had we budgeted for this type of thing? Is it in the budget?
No,
Yeah.
it is not. It is not in the budget.
And did you want to add anything to that as far as where we're at budgetary wise, like is if there's room in our budget that things that we're not doing that this would replace or otherwise, or is this just?
Well, if I can, Mr. Mayor, when it comes to the recreation department, it was a very lean budget. It was a lean budget because we were relying also on the rec committee to kind of guide us through 2023 to help us then set up for 2024. So if there's surpluses, the surpluses would pick up this extra cost, but the surpluses won't be met in the recreation department. Potentially surpluses in public works, potentially some surpluses in administration. But recreation itself is very lean.
Yes, Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are these upgrades necessary for the existing systems to work? Meaning if we don't upgrade, are we then gonna have are we gonna have systems that just don't work now? And so we're no longer safe and secure? Is
Yes,
that,
Andy.
So through the mayor, currently, there are no extremely permanent issues. These are more preemptive measures and for modernization, because we're still relying on EMR systems for the majority of our systems. Upgrading the system would allow us to digitize all of our security features. So we've got digital cameras, digital keys and lock, key card system, you move away from physical features. And on top of that, everything is centralized to the office and third.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Yes, Jay, did you want to comment?
Yes, just to add to one of the tasks on my list, it's the keys themselves, like the physical keys. Just over the years and whatnot, some of them missing, some of them are bad work, so there's gonna be some cost due to the keys. This system makes us modern, updates us, enhances our security, also will help support rec. We have sometimes people needing a key to do their event at night that they've rented for. We can just click on that now. And if that's the direction that council wants to go, then all these physical keys, finding all the locks, finding all the patterns, all that can be pushed to the side now, save the tremendous amount of time.
Okay, thanks for that update, James. Yes, Cass?
And I know Chris had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Just for council's information, council may not remember, but ATS, we have our information technology supplier, if you will. They did a report after they had investigated and looked at everything, and these cameras and security system was part of that report. So whether we do it all now or split it up into the budget years, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, I think that we're getting this in place. As Councilor Neal pointed out, it's very important for the kids in the arena, but also important for security here too. We're right on the highway. We will be videotaping people coming and going through the door in case there's somebody that may not be behaving correctly. There's a whole lot of reasons why we want to do it. So I think it's a great thing to do and get them all working together. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's Cass.
If I, just for information purposes for council, so you do very well in your gym membership revenue, very well. But that's one of the problems right now is that we have residents and some non-residents who have gym memberships who go to use the gym, they can't get in. And then it's a constant problem, then they're calling the front has to find the time or the way to now reset the cards. We're extending gym memberships, recognizing the hassle we've gone through. So it's, again, if it's not done now, it should be looked at eventually, because you do very well with the gym memberships.
Yes, Councilor Neal, one more time.
Yeah, your worship, this is part of the follow what Chris was saying. When I look at, because that grant is conditional, is there any way the grant can be, started with the money, first amount of money is going to the arena first, and then in the new year, then it would actually be a part of next year's budget? Can that work at all? So the extra amount would actually could be factored in next year's budget for the township office. Then it's actually going to get done. It's just part would be done this year's budget. That's covered by the grant. Next year, then we could budget as far as we're actually in the township budget, and we're not incurring any cost anybody in the community. I know it's not, a huge amount, but I just think every little penny right now, if we can save it, I think we'll keep people maybe, but that's my question, Your Worship.
Can you answer that question directly?
Well, I just want to make sure I understand it, Mr. Mayor. So Councilor Neal, so you're saying so the grant's conditional for this building. So you're saying you move forward with the municipal office before you move forward with the arena?
Well, I thought you said again, because we're trying to do both of these things, right?
Yes.
So if there's a grant, here's my whole thing here. If there's a grant that says the grant will cover this office right now, well, then if the grant does cover that, then we have to put 13,000 for the budget for next year for the arena. Now, I'm not really opposed to that. I just think trying to add that extra money now, and I wasn't sure if you could even sort of activate it, and then any monies we could get, then try to do it that way. And I understand that's not going to happen. So I'm not in favor of spending anything right now, as far as extra costs until next year for the arena, even though I think it's more important than the office right here. But I don't know. I'm just concerned about spending, and I'm not sure where we stand overall this year to date. If we're in a good financial position or in a bad one. But I'm just cautious about funds. That's fine.
Okay, thanks for your concern. Yes, Cass?
So in relation to your finances, so I want to say it was last month. It was still too early in the year to see where you're sitting, because a lot of the spending, well, fortunately, it comes from public works, and a lot of those costs are about to be incurred. So, so to tell you the truth, we are behind track in relation to expenses being incurred. I'll have a better idea where you're sitting in relation to surplus deficit, probably near the end of October.
Yes, Councilor Guy.
This grant, if we don't apply for it like now, are we still going to be eligible to get it later on?
Yeah, go ahead, Cass.
So this grant actually we already have, it's already been approved.
Okay.
It was $100,000. We've spent 67,000 of that $100,000. So we don't want to give the money back, and this was just a thought we had. Because obviously that, the difference will not help us with the expansion.
So, okay, go ahead, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. In that same report is a further $57,000 worth of items that ATS reviewed. Is that gonna come to the table shortly after, or is that gonna be a contingency that now that you've done that, you have to upgrade the phone, you have to upgrade the wiring and all that? Because in that report, the final thing is then 57 grand.
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
No, I think that's a very reasonable question. I think that plan is part of a longer term play. Some things need to be done sooner rather than later, some are later. They'll all be budgetary issues. The staff is not going to bring something to the table again with respect to what ATS indicated. This tomorrow month is the most important thing that should get done because it talks about the safety and security of people, in particular the children.
Yes, Councillor Gunn.
I think we should do it, but I just want to make sure that
We can afford
we
it.
can afford it. That's all.
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we postpone until we have those numbers? And where we can see where we're at in regards to spending? And if we can afford it, can not afford it?
And council would indulge me just to make a comment. In regards to, it looks like there's about $37,000 or whatever left in the
Grant,
grant.
Mhm.
So in other words, no matter what, there's money around, even if we're almost doing what Councillor Neil was alluding to earlier, where we go ahead and do the work and if we, like, we've got money that we can use to pay the bill and attach to next year's budget instead of running into the deficit this year.
well,
No,
No,
it doesn't work.
that's-
Okay, can't.
I'm being kind, that's like creative
No, no.
accounting, I won't do that.
No, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, so you have, so that. If we, so what Councillor Schmidt is talking about, potentially you may want just putting a thought out there for council, if you could defer this. I'm just saying until the end of October, where then you ask staff to bring it back for council to revisit, that way we have a better idea where we're sitting at in relation to our finances. And again, you'd be looking for 13,000, because the 14,000 is covered by the grant.
Yes, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. I'd like to put a motion on the table then to defer it to in October.
I need a seconder, Mr. Minnie.
Second for that, Councillor Neil. And just before we read the motion, I just wanted to, if Councillor Dublin wanted to ask Hanky, can we do half of the job, like is this, the cost conditional on doing both of them at the same time, or? Yes, Hanky.
So through the mayor, it's actually option 2. You can do the office first, do the key card upgrades and the security camera, install the central system, and then you can expand it to almost any other building later on.
So would that be, might work even better than just deferring the whole plan is to go ahead and do the office portion of it that we actually have the funding for? Would council even consider doing that? Yes, Cass.
Okay, so now procedures are kicking in.
Oh, now we have to do,
Motion
yeah.
on the table to defer.
Okay,
Okay, based on what you just said, council can choose to not defer the item and then we table another motion, but we gotta deal with the deferred motion.
okay. So, and you read that again, or we got,
I'm just still writing it
just
there.
already, okay.
Move, oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I read?
Yes, please.
It was moved by Councillor Diamond and seconded by Councillor Neil, that council defer agenda item 9B to the October 26th regular council meeting.
And, okay, well, I'll ask for a vote on the amendment, on the resolution to defer. All those in favor of deferring? Against? Defeated.
Okay, so the main motion is back on the table.
Okay, do you want to, somebody wanted to put forward a motion for another amendment?
Can
Councilor Smith?
I put forward a motion to move forward with the portion that's covered by the grant? And then defer the portion that we would need to fund through the
So in
budget.
other words, we're gonna defer the arena portion till we get a staff report and or the next year's budget.
Thank,
And we'll move forward with the office work.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's what I'd like to put on the table.
I will need a seconder before I start drafting.
Seconded by Councillor Gary.
So can you give me a few minutes, please?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do you want me to sign it? I know we put pressure on you, Cass. Sorry.
Okay.
They should know he's running senators. Chris? They should know he's running senators. No comment. That's Councillor Bennett.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question before you table a motion? If you add the admin office upgrade and the cameras for the office, it comes in at 16,500. Is that COVID infrastructure grant gonna cover that?
There's more than that there.
Hmm?
There's more there than that.
No, I'm just wondering why we would have only said 14,600 in the motion, but if you add up the two quotes, it's 16,500. Wonder why we only use 14.
There's the wrong number.
I'll let Angie look at that.
Angie can, yes, Angie?
Sorry, just for clarification, where are you getting the numbers to get the 16,500?
Schedule B is 10,700. Schedule D is 5,800. Admin office upgrade and cameras for office.
Oh, I didn't include the taxes because we get a rebate back as
So those total numbers are all taxes in and the numbers we're talking about is outside.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. So you've got an amended resolution for us here, Councillor?
I do,
Did you want to read it, please?
I can. Moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Gadri, that council move forward with the key card system and security cameras at the municipal office through the ICIP COVID fund, 14,667.67, and that council defer the upgrade to the Vern Miller Arena to the 2024 budget.
Does that work for everyone or for the mover and seconder? Does that make sense? Sound right?
Yeah. Well, didn't we see before till October, like
October till the end of October. Mr. Mayor.
You can change that to instead of reading 2024 to 2024 budget.
Sorry,
So-
to the end of October,
And
for the arena, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, for the arena portion to the end
it'll
of the.
come back.
To reassess.
Okay.
At least it'll show back up.
Okay.
Can you read it just one more time?
Yes, I
real quick,
can, yes.
please?
Moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Gadri, that council move forward with the key card system and security cameras at the municipal office through the ICIP COVID fund for 14,667.67, and that council defer the upgrade to the Vern Miller Arena to reassess at the October 26, 2023 regular council meeting.
That sounds better. Having heard the resolution, all those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to take this time, we'll get there.
So now it's the addition of the gravel report.
Okay, so that's 9C, we've got the gravel report that was added in so that we can get to that. I'll get a mover and a seconder, just so that we can actually table the report and then ask the questions. Mover and a seconder on the resolution. Councillor Schmidt, Councillor Neal.
It was moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Neil that council support the recommendation of the director to award this contract to Villeneuve Construction for their submitted price of $1,041,600 plus HST.
Now, I'm sure council has a question, someone of your council must have a question for James. No question, yes, Councilor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Because we're talking money.
Yep, what roads is this $1.1 million? I have 3 or 4 questions, so what roads is this $1.1 million gonna cover?
They're both in the Raymore area, specifically, I don't have the list on the top of my head, it was included in the package. I can get it for you, but just off the top of my head.
That's the section that we plan.
Yeah, it was the Raymore area.
Does anyone else from council has questions before I allow any further questions? Yes, Councilor Neil?
So this is part of the 20% increase of our 34%. It was going to highways for 1/3 of municipal roads to be done. Is that 1/3 number even going to happen, or is that be close to a 1/3 number based on some of this repair work?
Well, that will cover approximately 1/3 of our roads. James,
Honestly, I can't speak to that.
you're not sure.
Well,
It's
there's the roads that were done before my time, and I'm maybe not sure that those were or were not, how much was covered and whatnot. So,
Does that answer your question, Councilor Neil?
Well, it doesn't answer the question, but it gives me information that we don't have information. Because my concern is, again, and that's been mentioned before, just to have a project tracking from Public Works, knowing what 1/3 of roads as per our budget to the community, what 1/3 of roads are going to be done, so that if they ask, we can give an intelligent answer and say, here's the 1/3 of the roads that are going to be worked on this year. When I read this, I think this is a great report. And it tells us the fragility of our township and fragility even economically as far as with the cost of repair, which again is just another scary thing as far as I'm concerned on the cost. But I just think again, for the work of it that gets to get done. First, I don't know if this one would be considered, steering from Mary to pay Paul or something, like we're taking money that this should be something separate from our roads thing, or if this is all included under that. Then that probably should be communicated to our residents so they know where the money has been.
Thank yes, James.
so I was able to pull the RFP.
Yeah.
So we have approximately 350 kilometers of gravel road.
Yeah.
The total amount of road that this will cover is just under 94 kilometers. And so we're in that area.
Close.
I can also speak to the roads that will be done if you want to list, but they're in that area. Yes.
And yes,
Just your worship for you to James, the Public Works Director. Is that something that will happen this year before winter?
Yes. Perfect. Yes, it's an ambitious timeline. One of the reasons that I'm recommending Villeneuve over the other bidders is that they have that reputation. I've worked with them in the past. They lose a truck that's supposed to be belly dumping. They just have another truck to go in the line ready to go and it fits that ambitious timeline. One of the big considerations that was in the report is it's not just getting it on the road, but getting traffic over it. We want it to get packed down as much as it can. Otherwise, it's gonna get pushed away with the snow and then we lose money.
Councilor Bennett, did you have a question yet on that or?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is regarding last year and how we changed it to this year. So I don't know if we have a bonding, if there's a percent bonding that the bidders have to put in here, but there's an issue in here about quality control from last year. So my question is, who is in charge of quality control last year? Who's going to be in charge of quality control this year? What's the penalty? And was there a penalty last year? Because we paid full value and they put on inferior product and we let it be. We got plagued. So that's my questions.
Okay.
Go ahead, James. If you want.
I'll just.
You can- yes, you can talk to somebody.
I'll be looking after the quality control. It's, I have a background for several years in professional. It's seed analysis tests and they tell you whether or not you meet the spec. I have the Grant A spec, which was included in the tender, so that's what's expected. As far as penalty, there's language in the tender that I wrote that says that it will be corrected or you forfeit that money.
And you can't speak on last year?
Not for last year, no, but.
Chris?
What,
Generalize.
generalize it, staff member who was responsible for it is no longer with us. So, where I come in is when it came to the billing. I can't speak to the quality control because that was handled and managed by another individual, but I can speak to the billing. And we had a very difficult time with the supporting documentation that we were getting from the gravel, the granular that we were getting, trying to match that up with the invoices. So we actually had a very difficult time reconciling it. We went to the individual who was in charge last year, mentioned how we were having issues. We contacted the vendor, mentioned how we were having issues. And it came to the point where the individual who was responsible for it did have a meeting with that contractor at that time to go through some of the issues. Certain things were discussed and they came to an agreement, if you will, at the end. I can only speak to that, where we were then told to move forward with the billing.
Doesn't sound great, but anyway, it is what it is. And history, we can't change it. Yes, Chris? Oh, right, Councilman.
We're just through you to James. Schedule, I appreciate Chris Ray, our CEO, who gave me a schedule for road work. Is that something that we can still ask, or is that asking too much? And we actually have it, like, as far as the project tracker, so we know what work is scheduled to happen. Just so when people ask us in the community, then we actually can say, well, we have something here that I can identify, say, this is gonna happen at this particular time as a schedule. I know there's emergencies that take place that move things, you know, as far as weeks or whatever. But I don't want to throw too much on your plate, but I just think that's something that I appreciate as a counselor, to have a schedule. So if that is something that we're able to get, we greatly appreciate it.
James, comments?
We've talked about a few other options to make it easier to make on us and not for you guys to just be able to get that information. I don't think we came to any conclusions yet, but absolutely, you're right to have that information when we're at. We're working on the best way to do that.
Councilor Brown? Oh. Councilor Brown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One option I want to ask, throw on the table is for every $40,000 the budget, it's 1% of 1%. 48?
49.
49.
Okay, so right now we're 5% over our budget, right? At 250 grand, that's 5%.
Yeah, probably.
I hate spending money that we don't have. Because then when we start next year, we're already in the hole. Is there an option that we go to Villeneuve and say, we'll give you 770 grand and do 89 kilometers of road and keep the residents happy? Because
And I appreciate the question, and I don't want to get into a debate. I just wanted to just comment. I kind of asked the director that also earlier, and it just keeps coming back to the thing is, I agree on the spending, I'm concerned with that too. But the other concern though is how do we ever get to a point where we're actually managing the kilometers of roads we have to do on a regular basis? But anyway, I'm sorry, I'll let James answer the question.
So when I first opened the bids, it was shocking because we had our budget and a lot of work. I actually had the most senior guys from Public Works come in, and the first thing I asked was, can we cut the amount down? And they assured me that kind of every rock is needed, the roads that this is going to be in that area. I haven't seen any attention for a while. I asked another option we had was just to have them bring in the rock and then we would run the trucks. The problem with that is that the one bidder that is at the bottom of that list, they would be the ones supplying the trucks, and my team didn't have any faith that they'd be able to pull it off. So we did look at other options to try and call Villeneuve back or even Miller back and say, hey, we save some money here, but like I said, it was the two senior guys and I trust their judgment.
Any other questions from council? Chris, you were gonna say.
One of the things James and I have been talking about is an idea that I originally had when I came here, because I couldn't understand why we were buying such huge amounts of gravel when gravel is a commodity that's regularly or readily available in this part of Ontario. We do have four pits. So 4 pits we have. James has been to them all to look, and one of the options that we're looking at is crushing our own gravel. Now,
Future.
exactly. So when we say that, you know, you've got to bring in a gravel crusher and all that. Somebody's got to do it. There's a cost per ton or per ton to do that, but it's likely a lot less than what we're going to pay here. So, and you have to look at your resource and say, okay, how much more can you take out of this bit and that bit? So we're exploring that, and you know, for the cost of it, if you've got the cash flow, if you could stockpile 3 or 4 years worth of gravel. It doesn't hit your taxes or your income statement until you use it. But you still have to pay for it up front there, and that therein lies the capital issue, right? So it is something that we're looking at, and hopefully, you know, by the time we come around to talk the budget, we might have a better idea for that.
Question answered? Maybe didn't make you 100% happy with answer. Any other questions from any other councilors? Yes, Councilor Diamond, one more question on the issue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question, it's a comment. We have an issue here, we have an issue, I don't know, 11. We have another issue where we're over budget, I just have a hard time
Being over budget.
being over budget.
Me too, but
When a minute ago, we just deferred $13,000, and yet here we're gonna spend, in the next 20 minutes, we're gonna spend over 300 grand, in the blink of an eye. I have a hard time with that, I really like, I wish we could. It says, you know, we had staffing issues, and that's the reason that the costs went up over all that, so that's a reason, but. I just have a hard time spending money that we don't have. I don't do it in my personal life, I just don't wanna do it for residents either. So if that's why I'm saying, if we can do less roads, I know the roads haven't seen it in so many years, but. Another year for 5 kilometers, 4 kilometers road, I don't know what it would be, so. Just an idea. A lot of money. That we don't have.
do you want to respond or is it?
I don't disagree with the money, putting it off, I don't think is a good option, these roads are traveled by our people. You can cut 5 kilometers, or let's go with percentage, 5% off your total kilometers done, you're not gonna see 5% on the savings, because either way, they're loading in, they're crushing, they're doing all that, so you'll have a small amount of savings if they're not gonna finish off this end of the road, but it's not like you're losing half their fleet, or, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it'll have that big of an effect. The problem I have with the other bid is that I see that as a waste of $800,000. So I understand it's 300 more, I know the number, but we need to do the roads. And then deal with them. If we don't do them, the other kind of offshoot of that is trying to keep them usable in the spring when they don't have any kind of cap at all left in them. The grading slime, clay.
Can I just ask James one question, please, is, are you pretty confident that they can get this on? Northern Ontario, we could get snow in 3 weeks from now. And I don't know what the plan would be then, if we do get snow, like I saw that everything, all that's off.
Yeah.
But is this contractor ready to go basically?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
And just, just to go with that, have you got the staff to monitor or to? I'm sure there's got to be some kind of a monitoring process on the tonnage that's going out on the roads, and
Yeah.
there's something, right?
Yeah, it'll all, the foreman will be
There's a plan.
with them every day. There's going to be slips coming from as far as what's been produced and what's been delivered. Those will go to the foreman.
And they're ready to go basically
There.
the minute we approve this.
Yes.
That's good to know. Anybody else have any further questions? If not, I'm gonna, I believe everybody, we've heard the resolution. And I'll call for a vote, and everybody can vote as they feel fit, but I'll call for a vote, a show of hands, all those in favor of the resolution. Against? So I've got, I guess it's defeated. So how would council like to proceed now? If we're gonna do anything, we still have to do something here. I'm not sure what council would like to do here now, but yes, Councilor Neil?
Your worship, I think again, our condition is if we actually stick to what we budget. Any price incurred over budget, then we should reduce. So I think we can actually stick to our budget. I think that's right now, especially with everything that's going on. Inflation, and everything else, I think if we can actually get a price not greater than that amount of money, so we're not paying any extra fees. That would be my recommendation.
So what are you suggesting, that we reduce the number of roads being done, or find a way to reduce the cost?
We need to find a way to reduce the cost, so it actually fits within the budget amount that we set. However that works, I know that's not a fun thing to have to try to reconfigure everything. But I think we need to stick to budget. I don't want to be sitting, you know, at a meeting for the township next year and we blown things even bigger out of the water. So I just think again, let's try to follow budget.
And what I, and just my own, and I don't disagree with you, Councilor Neil. Economics is pretty important in this municipality or any other municipality. My only concern is what I've heard from the director so far is that he's not sure if there's actually a way to reduce the cost down to that level. Is it like, how could you ever reduce the cost, reduce the number of tons of gravel and then determine where they're going?
That's right.
Is that the biggest part of the cost is the amount of gravel?
Pretty much, there's 38,500.
So is
Like,
there,
that we can bring that down to 25,000, say that hits us the budget, but now council have to give direction about, oh, I'm supposed to pick which road is more important than the other road. And I already get a lot of that with roads, right? And it's everybody, wherever you live, your road's the most important. Yeah. So, as far as public sentiment, I need some direction on that one.
yes, Chris?
Before we go there. Further to Councilor
Yeah.
Neal's, and I can't argue about, let's not spend over budget. There's no question, I can't argue about that, I think it's. Given what's gone on here, it's not a bad principle to have. Where's the bar? That's my question. Does it apply to this? It should apply to everything. I'm more talking about, because. You know, our general operating costs are a little easier to cut off. We spent $1,500 in this one. Right? But on capital costs, it's a lot harder to do that. If we're gonna do that, we should do it with all of our capital costs. If one item comes in over budget, no, we're not gonna do that. And particularly because the treasurer is arranged on some equipment, it's arranged a rotating line of credit, right? So the higher the cost, the higher the payback, the higher the interest, right? So if we're gonna do it, just make sure that we set the bar at the right place. Otherwise, staff are gonna be continuing to guessing.
Yes, Councilor.
Your worship to Chris. Something that I look at that we've said in our budget meetings was because of previous running, using the money that was in reserve, keep the town, which is an appropriate way of handling any finances. I find if we keep doing what we're doing, we're gonna end up doing exactly the same thing that we said we weren't gonna do. And so that's my concern about trying to maintain a tight ship. You know, I think for the next little bit, we have to hold things pretty tight. And essential services, I mean, if there's other places we can cut. And then when we look at essential services, it's hard to cut an essential service. When I look at there's certain parts of the road are essential to have to get done, maybe others aren't as desperate right now, and I know that's extra work on it. For what road do I have to cut? But I do feel I don't want to be in the same position that we have made comments about as a council about running the township out of reserves. Don't ever want to go there again. And so that's just my comment. And I do think we gotta be really tight.
And I think those are very fair comments. And I don't know whether to direct the comment to Chris or to Cassandra or maybe to both. Since we've actually, we're hearing that there is certain things like on the revolving line of credit that we're not even gonna be able to purchase. Are we, would that be reasonable to give those numbers towards the gravel contract? Or is that just, no?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm shaking my head no, but I'm not sure that I totally.
Because the revolving line of credit is supposed to be for long-term, then,
And
right?
it's also for the equipment. just
For equipment,
it's for the-
You're not gonna borrow money to supplement your operating costs.
And that's why I'm just asking the question. That's good. I got the answer. So we need to give James and staff some kind of direction here, council, as to what we're gonna do, because we do need to do something. Yes, Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what roads in Raymore you're planning to do, but if we did the main roads, the main traveled roads, and then the tributaries with the least amount of ratepayers. I think there's one road that might only have a farm and a house 7 kilometers down there. Unfortunately, they'll have to go on the back burner, but at least once they hit the main road, they'll be safer than they are now. I think would be my suggestion.
Okay, so judge it by volume and.
Yeah. I think residents will understand that better than saying we overspent by 300 grand. They'll understand the predicament we're in.
One other question maybe just goes with Councillor Diamond and Councillor Neal's comments. Like, how much of that 38,000 was stopped at? Do you remember? Jane?
Around 15.
15?
Yeah, it was.
And so could we, I mean, we do have to have stockpile of some kind, and then most of it's gone. But is there a way to reduce on the stockpile that might leave us even closer? Yes, Cass?
Well, here's the thing, council procedure, so you don't have a motion on the table.
No, I'm just asking you questions.
No, I understand you're asking a question, but we also need to define what the debate is. What's the debate? Who are we going with? And I'm just trying to bring it back, council. Who are you giving the tender to, if anyone? And then what are you?
And what direction?
In
we're
what
gonna go?
direction? So it's more, can we focus on maybe getting a motion on the table so that you can then continue your
Certainly.
debate?
Yes, Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Put a motion on the table that we go with Vilna for the budgeted amount. And we determine the roads accordingly.
I'll do a seconder and then I'll draft the motion.
I need a seconder for the resolution. Yeah, Chris?
I'm sorry, I don't, it's up to the director to gravel those,
Yes.
right? The council wants to cut it down to the budget, that's great, okay. But I think
And it'll be
the
up to the
director
director.
was a problem with gravel where it's been.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, just trying to keep council away from, you know, whereas people might go, well, my road is.
No.
My friend's road, right? No, it's determined by the director on some, you know, basis that he has.
And I think that's a very, very, very good way to say.
So my motion is that we,
We
Award it to
go with
Vilna.
Vilna Construction as per the original recommendation,
as per the,
but stay within our budgeted amount,
yes,
plus or minus,
within the budget amount.
strictly budget amount.
Yeah.
Who's the seconder, Mr. Mayor?
I need a second, Councillor Nick.
Okay, so it's, can I have a few minutes?
Yes,
You don't come up. That's not so complicated.
yes.
Yeah,
Councillor Nick.
just a comment, when Chris Gray was talking, the CEO was talking about the tractor. I like that idea a lot. I think that's something definitely we need to examine, because I think we definitely have, when I look as far as resources, we have all kinds of resources. And I think in the long haul, that's a huge savings, and I look at for helping our community for condition of our roads. I think that's a great idea.
You know, if you're able to stockpile a certain amount of gravel
Every year.
that you look down the road that you've got it for a few years, it makes bumps in the maintenance a little easier to deal with. So if one year you need a little bit more because something happened, washouts or whatever, it makes that a little easier because you've got that stockpile, right? Knowing, of course, when you use it, it's gonna have a cost to it, but still you've got it available at a lesser cost than purchasing.
I think next year we need to budget more too.
We either need to work, because we're doing less roads or doing less work this year. We're either gonna have to start looking at a 4-year cycle instead of a 3, which nobody really wants to do because it doesn't make a lot of sense either. But you're right, we're gonna have to make some adjustments in our planning of some kind, as much as we're doing it on the fly again. Is any, I know the one major local contractor does not have a crusher. Does anybody have a crusher here? The one does?
I can speak to it, state.
No.
It was listed
As a
as
piece of
their
equipment.
equipment.
Okay.
On their.
Okay.
So, I mean, we don't want to run it as a municipality, I don't think, because the things are designed to shape themselves to death.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty hard. You get the contractor in and you're crushing your stockpiling. You don't have no bid, no transportation and all that, you're just making based on.
I know most of the local contractors, I'll bring in a building over at Edison or somebody to do the crushing. You have a resolution for us, there, Cass?
I do, it's rough, but I have one.
That's good enough.
Moved by Councillor Diamond and seconded by Councillor Neal, that council award the gravel tender to Vilna Construction at the budgeted amount of $775,000, and that the director alter the tonnage to stay within the budget.
Makes sense to you, Councilor Diamond? Okay, we have a resolution that's on the floor. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objection to carry.
So we're at the bylaws, so Mr. Mayor, so
Yeah.
it's, okay.
So I guess I need to move her to seconder again. We're going into, we're gonna go into our 10A under bylaws. And the first one, the bylaw to establish a health and safety accountability procedure. So I need to move her to seconder, moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Gathering.
Moved by Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Gathering, that bylaw number 2023-42, being a bylaw to establish a health and safety accountabilities procedure, be read a first, second, and third time and finally pass this 12th day of September 2023.
All those in favor of the resolution? Oh, Councillor, do you have a question, Councillor Gathering?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. How is our joint health and safety committee? Is it in good standing?
We have a meeting coming up, right? We have to figure out the time of this, so if I can be there, we have one. Yeah, so there's a meeting this month. We have a quarterly.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My next question is under disciplinary, progressive disciplinary process. It says in here that the township of Black River Madison reserves the right to combine or skip steps. Is that common practice in industries?
Chris, Kalahari, Cap, or Jane?
I've had that in my contracts in places I've worked before where, depending on the level, and so if you have something, that from the company, somebody, making somebody else leave or whatnot, then the manager has the discretion to just move up to that final level immediately. And I've had that.
Yes.
So for consistency, Councillor Diamond, that's also in our disciplinary policy, that depending on the nature of the fraction, we can skip steps, so there's consistency.
Okay, so we've heard the resolution. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the vote of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. So we'll move on to our next one, which is the injury, illness, and incident reporting bylaw. Moving to seconder one more time. I got a Councillor Diamond and Councillor Gathering.
Moved by Councillor Diamond, seconded by Councillor Gathering, that bylaw number 2023-43, being a bylaw to establish an injury, illness, and incident reporting procedure, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 12th day of September 2023.
Yes, Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Section E, policy detail, A and B. First question, A is, how are we with our first aid with our crews and our staff?
Cap?
We actually just did some recertification for that. So we're in compliance. I'll let the director speak to the rest of his department.
Yeah, also we have Lisa McIntyre, who's rec. She's going for her instructor level, like a training, but for first aid. So we'll not only have her here for staff, but it's also now a service that and there's hours that you have to pay and whatnot, won't be immediate, but that it's a service we can provide to the community babysitting courses and whatnot that our residents may have to travel to Timmins or Kirkland Lake to do. So it's coming along.
Thanks, James. Yes,
I
Councillor
just have a question. It's not directly with that, but it's with. Do we have an AED in the building?
Yes, we do. It's in the lunchroom.
And do we have naloxone kits?
No, we do not have that
We
here.
could have naloxone kits in all our buildings.
Yes, actually, you're not wrong. The PHU would be able to give us those kits, yes.
You can get those at the pharmacy.
But behind the door of the lunchroom is where the AED is.
Good. Thanks, James. So we get the resolution on that. Everyone's heard the resolution. I'll call for a vote, a show of hands. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. And our next one is C, right? Establish a training and communication procedure. Need to move to seconder again. Councillor Gathering and Councillor Schmidt.
Moved by Councillor Gathering, seconded by Councillor Schmidt, that bylaw number 2023-44, being a bylaw to establish a training and communication procedure, be read first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 12th day of September 2023.
Yes, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this policy, it refers to toolbox topics and toolbox talks. Do we do them and who does them?
Yes, Cass.
Well, I can speak to it. So administration does not. Councillor Diamond, I know Public Works does. And my understanding is it's going to be Jason Edwards, who's the health and safety rep that does those talks.
There is also a record that they're done daily. There's when they fill out their gun sheets or their activity logs, I guess. It is noted on there and also the subject that they spoke about.
They're following process. That's good. Everyone's heard the resolution. I'll call for a vote again, a show of hands. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. Thank you for the good question. And our next one is to establish a workplace health and health promotion procedure. So I need a mover and a seconder again. Councillor Neil and Councillor Gathering.
Moved by Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Gattari, that bylaw number 2023-45, being a bylaw to establish a workplace health promotion procedure, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 12th day of September 2023.
Seeing nobody with a question, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. Thank you. Paper today, we can give it still not happening. The next bylaw is to adopt the compensation of municipal employees as volunteer firefighters. We move in the secondary, Councillor Neil and Councillor Gathering.
Moved by Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Gattari, that bylaw number 2023-47, being a bylaw to adopt a compensation of municipal employees as volunteer firefighters policy, be read a second and third time, and finally passed the 12th day of September 2023.
Yes, Councillor Neil?
Yes, Your Worship. 1B, any employee selected to serve on the volunteer fire department and who wishes to respond to calls for service during scheduled work hours must notify his or her supervisor of the request to respond. Is that simply text message, quick phone call, or do they have to talk to the person directly? Because when you're responding to an emergency call, it's get there. So I just want to know if that should be wording should be changed. That it should be maybe more specific via a text message or voicemail if they can't respond.
Does it actually state that it has to be spoken to, or just
That's
notify?
what I'm saying.
If it just says notify, and notify is,
It says notify, but I don't know if notify means again, it can just simply by text. I don't want to get any of the workers in trouble if they text or if they call and there's no answer and then they're being hassled because they didn't speak to anybody. Just want to make sure for clarification. If that's not an issue, then we'll move on. But if it is, I just thought for clarification.
do you want to speak that, James, or pass?
Well, I'd like to speak from
ahead.
administration. So we don't have there's no one in administration who's a volunteer fireman, but if council's comfortable with it, I would like if that could be kept with the department head. Depending how you work with your staff or what the environment is, a text message may be easier. Maybe it's an email, maybe it's I'm telling my coworker and then the coworkers come tell me, I don't know if council's comfortable with that. But if that could be determined based on the department head and where they're located, because I'm thinking for administration, I may want it set up differently than from public works. Just making a comment.
Yes, Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to suggest, and we have the fire chief here as well, but I think as I mentioned before, we have an app on our telephone or on our phone that when I respond, whether I respond or don't respond, I get a call on my I am responding app. And I click a button to say I'm responding or I'm not. And either way, it sends text message to my spouse saying David is responding or David is not responding.
So we can have that to be.
So if the fire chief was agreeing with that, for the volunteer firemen, they could have James as a contact. So all it is yes, I'm responding, and then you get the notification right away.
Not speaking for any other department, that works for me. It's just a matter of knowing.
Just
But I agree with
to
that. You gotta get going. You need a formal letter written up and signed by.
I don't know if that's available. I'll have to ask the fire chief if there's more than one contact available, but
I think there is. I'd have to look into it, but I believe there is.
and just speaking, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know the only comment I heard from anyone, period, was that the biggest concern was, say, for example, it's most of the public works people that we're talking about. The only major concern would be, you're sitting there and you got a trench open and it's the equipment operator. Well, somebody has to know to replace him or whatever for the safety of everything else, right? So it's not just a matter of attending a fire. It's important to make sure the task at hand is dealt with too. So I think that's why it's written the way it is. And just as long as everybody's reasonable, it should work. Catherine.
Yeah, Your Worship, that's actually included in the thing that again, they don't leave a scene that's unsafe.
So,
So that has already been covered.
Chris, yes.
Nobody should be given grief for the fire,
No.
or an accident, whatever it might be. That
Just a
is certainly not something I would support, and working with James for the past month or so. I know he wouldn't support that either. So, sorry, James, no one's being your wrath, but, and they just did. It's contrary to what we do.
His contract,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under 2.0 A workplace, while performing on-call duties in the course of their regular employment for the township, employees will not be permitted to respond to emergency calls as volunteer firefighters. So it's twofold. One is, was there an incident in the past that has led us to not do this? And two is if someone is on call, one of our public workers is on call, and he's sitting at home, and we get a call, I don't see the harm in him or her responding to a call, knowing that if his phone goes off, he would have to leave the fire or the accident to respond back to the on-call to the town. So it's a twofold question. Like what caused this sentence?
Nothing in particular, from my perspective, it's just a common sense thing. I understand what you're saying. My experience is it's hard enough to get people to be on call. If an on-call person then rushes, let's just say to a motor vehicle accident and gets on scene and find that they have to stay there. And all of a sudden alarm goes off and there's some problem that they have to deal with back in one of the ambulance. That they may not be able to leave, right? So, that could cause a problem. So I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, there's the other side of it, which is our other services that we're providing too. I don't know if there's a better way we can do that. Other than having an on-call and then an on-call for the on-call.
his company.
Yeah, your worship, just to address that. I know that, again, a couple years ago, we had a call for accidents, multi-vehicle accident on the bridge out of town. While we went to go to that one, there was another call for an accident up by the Y, so that was automatically diverted. So I'm just thinking again, I think there's always a flexibility of people that had to be,
Yes.
was from the town that was working for the municipality. That they could, actually, usually it's a matter of making sure there's enough people on the scene. Once there's enough people on scene, then
People,
I'm not fire chief can release that person, say if that happens, they're gone. I don't,
Yeah, I don't think.
maybe have the fire chief address that if he's willing. Guy, would you address that? What would your feeling be about that?
Yeah, through the mayor. It's kind of a difficult thing because there's an advantage to a public works guy being on call. Because we're so short of firefighters now that a public works guy being on call assures us we have a firefighter. We have had in the past where guys on call were called. And what they did is they just grabbed their phone, they called their fellow worker and said, I'm on my way to a call. Can you grab the plow and plow the roads and get the fire truck in? The next guy in line realized the emergency and they jumped in and helped. So in my mind, it's never been a problem. And to your comment, so what would be the hazard that the township would be responding to that'd be worse than a motor vehicle accident or house fire?
Yeah, no,
If you weigh up the two.
yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to set them side by side, but it could be something like a water line break, which puts the onus on us to look at doing a boil water advisory, right? So that's the kind of things I think about. I didn't mean to diminish the importance of responding to the multi-vehicle. It's just, I agree with you. I think that there's been no issue in the past and everybody's trying to do the right thing by taking care of the community. And if we continue to do that, then some of these clauses are never gonna come up.
And if I may, like I said before in the past, they took care of it themselves. They knew they were on call, they knew that they had to respond to one emergency, so they just called another public works employee who understood the situation and took over for that hour or two.
And I think we have to remember too, that it's not our entire public works crew that are firefighters as well. So, a lot of them will be on call, they won't even be affected.
James wanted to jump in here before you back on, since he's the guy that's gonna be dealing with everybody.
I was just for consideration, not really stating anything, but if the one call or that app, if that does have the extra people, that sort of mitigates it a little bit, at least I'm notified, and I know who my on-call guy is, and then, Jason Edwards is responding to a call, at least there's some mitigation factor in there, just for consideration. Thanks.
That's all good then? So we've heard the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution, I'll ask for show of hands. All those in favor of the resolution, seeing no objections, carried. And we got one more bylaw here. And mover and seconder again. Regarding the bylaw regarding staff pay management policy. And
It's,
the mover to seconder,
it's a housekeeping
it's
matter.
a housekeeping matter, Councilor Smith, Councilor Gabbard.
It was moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Gaddery that bylaw number 2023-49 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2023-007 staff pay management policy. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 12th day of September 2023. It was a schedule attached to the
Oh,
original.
that schedule.
Yes.
That schedule has been corrected.
That's good. This now corrects it.
Okay, thank you. I thought that's what it was, but I wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. And. Unfinished business.
Mhm.
11A is a Vimy Ridge Road report. And we need to move her to seconder regarding the report. Councilor Gathering, Councilor Smith.
Moved by Councillor Gaddery, seconded by Councillor Schmidt, that council acknowledges and received report DIS 2023-005 as information.
Question, no questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. Thanks, James. And our next one. Our next one is a money one. It's a motion to approve the purchase of the 2023 Maxi Pick 2,000 gallon pumper. And I need a mover and a seconder. A mover is Councilor Neal, seconded by Councilor Diamond.
Was moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Diamond. Whereas council approved the purchase of a 2,000 gallon pumper to replace unit number 15 for the fire department at a quoted price of $480,000 plus HST in August of 2022. Whereas this approval was authorized with resolution number 2022-190. Whereas market pressures for delivery and specification changes has altered the original price of the pumper replacement. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the new purchase price of the 2023 Maxi Pick 2000 at a price of $559,000 plus HST from commercial emergency equipment, which is $79,000 over budget.
Yes, Councilor.
Yes, your worship. This was approved in August of 2022. Was that again the incurred increase in cost? Is that because of COVID and availability, or is that because of late ordering? That's my question.
Chief Lamb, did you want to comment or Chris?
Frankly, I don't think it's because of late ordering, because Mr. Sinclair held on his price, so. I would note that, you may want to ask the chief about foam as well, because this does not include foam. And I'd give Mr. Sinclair credit, for holding his price. He also has this unit available as well. So, but I also know too that we're beyond budget as well, so.
Back to the budget question, Councilor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll help answer Keith's question, Councilor Keith's question is. There was a period of time when emails were disappearing into cyberspace, and some people didn't get it and some people did. So, and I'm sure the fire chief will agree that the tender was slow to go and the process was slow. So I don't want to blame it all on market pressures. We, as staff and council, have to take some blame for that because it was very slow. We're well over a year. Well over a year.
Yes, Kath.
If I can too, there was this also got lost in the agendas. Because at one point, there was a conversation for if council remembers when you first took office, there was a potential motion to reconsider to not purchase the pumper, to also fix it, because based on an iCompass, when we track, there was also some conversation there which also slowed this down. So it kind of got lost, as you mentioned, Councillor Diamond.
Any other councilors have questions before I go with Councilor Neil again? Councilor Neil?
Yeah, your worship, our treasurer, that's what I'm just wondering if we have, we talked about running. If that is maintained and things like this don't get buried, I think that's a good, you made that comment earlier, so I think that's a definitely a benefit of that, and that doesn't happen again.
Okay, thanks for the question, comments, and council indulge me, I have a question for the chief, and it's just a general question, Chief Lamb, since you're the guy that knows the most about the fire department, since you are in charge. At present, what is Raymore using for a fire truck?
Using the old 14 from Matheson.
The old, what are you saying, he was saying?
For this,
You're-
it's your same vintage as it said, unit 15. So on the report that Cassandra referred to, all that information's in that report. So I know council was supposed to review my report. Not sure if they did or not. But what we did is we have 2 trucks in Matheson. So when 15 failed, we moved it to Matheson. We moved the second truck from Matheson to Raymore. Right now, we have no redundancy built into the system. So for instance, our truck in Valgagne, we had issues with it 2 weeks ago, where it almost had to go to New Liskeard for repairs, which would have been a couple of weeks, which would have left us with no fire truck in Valgagne. So we're losing our ground. So if you read my report, there's a lot of information there that will help answer your questions.
Well, and my main question basically just, and I think you probably already just answered it. But my main question is, I know Valgagne has a pumper / small tanker, blah, blah, blah. But Matheson is always the 2,000 gallon tanker pumper, correct? Plus it also had its other pumper, right?
That's correct.
And then Raymore had one, and Raymore is the one that failed.
That's correct.
So in the mean, like like what they're saying is because what you're saying, and that's basically where I was going with my question is, do we have to have 2 trucks anyway? What you're saying is the second truck here is almost the backup truck for the whole department, is that what you're saying, or? Do
So the fleet we have now, we downsized our fleet a few years ago. We took 2 trucks out of that fleet. So what we did is we said we'd take 2 trucks out of that fleet, we'd maintain the fleet we had now, which put us comfortable because we would have 1 truck that we could potentially put in Valgagne or Raymore. And part of our problem is our geographic footprint is so huge. We need the amount of trucks to be able to shuttle water, because for us, we have to shuttle a lot of water to put these fires out. So the amount of trucks we have in service now, if 15 was running, is the minimum we can run with, if you do a risk-based assessment.
That was my question, you've answered my question, right, because I was basically looking at it from a layman standpoint and saying, we have one, we had 1 in Valgagne, we're supposed to have 1 in Raymore. Why do we have 2 in Matheson? You basically answered the question, thank you. Okay. So and then this new replacement, is it going to Raymore?
Yes,
Because it's a larger gallonage, right, on the tanker side?
that's correct.
Is anybody else on council? Yes, Councilor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask the fire chief a question?
Yes,
Sorry, I should know the answer. How many trucks do we have in total for the township?
Well, for ones that haul water, we have 4.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
any further questions from council? I know Councilor Neil just left for a second, I guess. Yeah, Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As CEO had mentioned, we should be talking about phone because I don't believe that's part of this 559.
That's correct. Yes.
We could maybe ask fire chief to explain to those that don't know what it is, what the advantage of phone is and why would we need it? Because that'll be another item to discuss, won't it?
We would need to change, you need to alter the motion.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Councilor.
Just to give you order of magnitude on that. So in order to buy the present vehicle, we need an additional $79,000. That's without phone. If we add the phone to it, we need an additional 115,700. Notwithstanding the importance or non-importance of it. The chief.
Yeah, just so that everybody's aware of what it's not just a home parties on the street, what the advantage of phone is.
For vehicle fires and so on, so.
Good.
You're there. Yeah, so the foam is becoming one of the more preferred ways of fighting fires. The advantage of foam is you use a lot less water. Back to our geographical footprint, the less water we can use to actually put out a fire. It's not only for vehicle fires, it's also for residential fires. It could be for fuel spills where we keep the vapors down, stuff like that. The online fuel system that we're referring to is a fair bit more, but it's a one-person operation. So basically, it's a tank on the truck that has X amount of gallons of foam on it. You flick a switch, you automatically get foam coming out of your nozzle. The alternative to that is we have to carry pails of foam. We have to buy an inductor, which is quite a bit cheaper, I will admit that. But if you're not a really good foam operator, a really good pump operator, I should say, you won't get foam out of those pails. There's a bit of a trick to it, there's a bit of a knack. And a full-time brigade where they pump water every day, not such a big problem because they have more manpower and they have dedicated pump operators that actually take training. In a volunteer department, the preferred one is like a switch, you have foam. It is a big cost. If you look at the bigger picture, this is going to be a 30-year truck. So the additional, the foam is about $1,100 a year. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I know Chris asked me about this, and it's, if it was to make a difference of buying the truck or not, we could make it work, but to be honest with you, I would prefer the foam on it.
I did read it.
So we have a resolution on the floor. Is there any further questions from council? If not, I'll call for a vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution? Oh, yes, Councilor Gavin.
Is this something we could, use like a line of credit for?
This is part of the line of credit. This purchase of this piece of equipment is part of the line of credit. It'll just, your line of credit payment will be higher because it's over.
No, but if it means the difference between being able to purchase the foam or not.
It'll be tacked on to that, the line of credit.
The resolution at present doesn't include it. The resolution at present, so if somebody wants to change the resolution, we need to move in a second or to amend it. Otherwise, we have a resolution to.
Is this something that has to be done, like you have to purchase it? When you purchase it?
You would save a lot of money by putting it on now. It's like anything else that you purchase. The tank is there at the manufacturer, they would install the pump at the equipment. If you purchase it after, we'd have to have somebody come here and apply that other equipment, so the cost would be very different.
Yes, Councilor.
Your worship, was there a price mentioned? I had to step out. Was there a price mentioned of what the extra cost would be with the phone?
Yeah, it's 115,755 more
Instead of 7.
than the original quote, so.
More than the original
Yeah,
quote.
so we're already looking, so on the original quote, we're adding 79,000. And then you're adding about another 36,000 on top of that, so the grand total is 674,755.
Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CAO sent out an email September 7th about fire services and in there it mentioned the Northern Fire Protection Program. Have we made any contact with them to see if they would help?
Yeah, it's a good question. At first, I thought, oh, this is really neat. So today I read through the whole thing. It doesn't apply to municipalities or First Nations. So they're talking about unorganized areas. Closest one to us would be, I guess, Gannon, maybe. So, I don't know, and they still haven't decided how they're gonna give out the vehicles yet.
Oh.
So is there anybody wish to, yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put a motion on the table, and this is contrary to what Keith and I both said about spending over budget, but I know this has been going longer than August 2022, because I remember approving this in our last sitting of council, our last 4 years before we went to lame duck.
That would have been your previous city.
So this has been going on for a long time. So again, I'm gonna say part of it's due to the length of process that this tender took. So I'd like to put a motion on the table that
You want to amend the resolution? Is that what you're wishing?
amend it to include the phone.
Okay, do I have a seconder, and Councillor Gathering, second motion? Go ahead.
To amend, so withdrawn. At 674, excuse me, just if I
Yeah.
can say,
Absolutely.
Mr. CAO, that was 674, 755, as opposed to.
After I disclosed it, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember what's that?
Okay.
This, your worship, I know that the other part for vehicles for the township. For the two gravel graders, sand graders, sander trucks, plows, and the grader. Have all those vehicles already been sent up for purchase? I mean, I had to step out because of conflict of interest about the grader, but have the two standing trucks already been?
For you, actually, James can answer it all because we actually approved the one thing, so.
Yeah, so the grader was approved by council, SMS, so we signed the sales agreement on that. The equipment is in British Columbia, they're arranging to transport now. When it gets here, we're gonna look see, so it'll be a few weeks, but yeah, we got it. The truck's still nothing, we've reached out to Peterbilt just today, actually. And this, what can we do, because the market is so slow for.
So your worship, can money that was gonna be shifted there this year, because it doesn't sound like maybe that's gonna happen this year. That this money that we put in the budget, that was actually, part of that increase was again, the grader and the two plow trucks. That the fire department's now phone could be covered by the money that we haven't spent this
So
year.
I believe that's all line of credit items anyway, right?
But they are,
So-
but it-
so-
Well, it's money that's come in via the budget.
Mhm.
Via taxes, so we increase the, when we increase the base, it was to help cover this.
yeah, not for the full purchase price for the line of credit payment, which was based on the budgeted amount. It just means that your line of credit payment goes up. Well, not necessarily. If you're gonna take money though from the public works equipment to apply this.
For
you'll
this
stay
year,
within
because
it.
we budgeted those things for this year, which are, that two of them are, the three items aren't being purchased.
Well, work with it.
This is something that, again, it's in 2022, so I'm just thinking that just to help. It should have helped absorb as far as the number at the end of the year when you're doing your financial report.
We will move in a second, or we'll let Cass do the little wording on the amendment. And then reread this resolution, then we'll vote on it.
Okay, so the amendment is strictly, we're just speaking about the amendment. We're not talking about the make motion. So the amendment was moved by Councillor Diamond and seconded by Councillor Gathering. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the purchase price of the 2023 Maxi Pick 2000 with phone at a price of 674, 755 plus HST from commercial emergency equipment.
So it's okay, everybody's heard the resolution, vote twice or three times, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the all those in favor of the amended resolution. Seeing no objections, carried.
Okay,
That's the amendment, no.
I'll read the main motion.
Yeah, that's just the amendment.
Moved by Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Diamond, whereas council approved the purchase of a 2,000-gallon pumper to replace unit number 15 for the fire department at a quoted price of 480,000 plus HST in August of 2022. Whereas this approval was authorized with resolution number 2022-190. Whereas market pressures for delivery and specification changes has altered the original price of the pumper replacement. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the new purchase price of the 2023 Maxi Pick 2000 with phone at a price of 674, 755 plus HST from commercial emergency equipment.
So now we have to have a second vote on the second part of the resolution. All those in favor of the second part of the resolution? Call for a vote. All those in favor, carried. No objection.
No, and just for clarity, so it's not on the second part, it's on the full motion. Yeah,
Full
yeah,
motion.
full
So,
motion.
thanks for the clarification. You know me.
Well, I just want to make, it's also to not confuse any members of the public who are watching.
And just for, I think Council Diamond or Council Neil, one of you asked about the money side of things. There is some, and I just won't allude to it in detail, but there is some stuff going on in the background, and there may be some help also. We're hoping. Yes, Ken.
And if I can, when it comes to the money side of things, when we're approaching more the end of the year and we have a lot of our purchases come in, a wholesome report can then come to council and go, okay, so we were supposed to schedule our money this way. Can we propose we now schedule the money this way? And then it sets us up for 2024.
Yeah, it gives us some flexibility. So now we can just move forward. Anyway, that's done. And now we need.
Yeah, with that,
That's an opening.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm gonna wait for Chris to come back anyway. So our last item in the, no, it's not our last, sorry. It's item 11C. It's a peer review from Creative Consulting on JL Richards office expansion proposal. And we have another resolution.
Yes,
We have a resolution to receive that report. You move in a seconder for the resolution to receive the report. Councillor Schmidt, Councillor Neil.
it was moved by Councillor Schmidt and seconded by Councillor Neil that council direct staff to continue with the planning process for the extension of the addition to the building at 367 4th Avenue. And that council direct staff to follow the recommendations made in the letter from Creative Consulting dated July 31st, 2023.
And I'm sure Chris has some comments, but I'll entertain, if people have questions first, or Chris would you like to.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'll say is that the information provided by Mr. Dixon, it's a very short, it's only 2 or 3 pages long. And I think frankly that his recommendations on what to do with this project, should council decide to go through with it, is that that's what we should be following. As he said, if you go over an RFP just for the building right now, you're just gonna get the same thing back. They're gonna ballpark it, they're gonna use a rough number per square foot, which he seems to think would be about $600, although he does admit that that might be a, JL Richards may have highballed that a little bit, only to not be under giving us a smaller number, right? So, and of course, we were never gonna build a building based on that, all has to go for RFP, but as he's indicated here, as I said before, there's a number of things that we need to do before that.
And did you want to highlight those, I know they're in the report.
Sure.
Why don't you just highlight them for the benefit of me?
So there are some possible constraints with respect to the property lines and the proximity to the railway. And one of those is that our building actually encroaches on our property right at the corner. And I don't have any documentation suggesting that that was resolved with ONR. So now I've got to contact ONR, and she is being very good at dealing with me and wants to start. And this, by the way, we got to take care of this anyway.
That we've done as we go.
No. So then we've got the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, water main details, etc. We've got to find out where all the mainline sewers are and locate them. The horizontal location of utilities within and adjacent to the specified site. There's hydro, there's gas, and there's communications, which we're all gonna have to establish where they are. Do some of them have to be moved, that type of thing. And I know that ONR actually was in town, and because of the return of the passenger train, they've been doing some really good work with respect to that. I'm hoping we're gonna be able to piggyback on that and save some cost. Topographical surveying and a geotech study. So we already done a geotech, at least a level 1. That might be of some use to cut some costs down there. And then, of course, a detailed engineering and architectural drawings for the proposed building expansion, overall site plan for the entire property. So that would include things like finishing, right? So, you know, if you're gonna build anything like that, well, is it gonna be like the Taj Mahal, where you can finish everything in marble?
We're going to finish it the
Or
same level.
are you gonna do the same that you have now? I would think it would be the latter.
Yeah.
Right, so, but still, those issues come into it when you're looking at putting it up for RFP, you gotta tell people what you want, right, in terms of those finishings. And then, an OPCC provided by a third party, consultant, so that's the contract, right? And then lastly, the preparation and mention a request for bid process to select the appropriate construction for it. That's actually the last thing you're gonna do. So that's really what the summary is.
And I'll ask council if they have questions before I ask mine. Yes, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we direct staff to continue with the planning process. Item number 3, under the recommendation, 1 is planning services to assist with the following. 2 is topographical surveying and geotechnical study, but 3 is detailed engineering and architectural drawings for the proposed building. We haven't decided on the proposed building, so I don't want to throw my hand up to do this because number 3 is they would be building a 27,000 square foot addition, which I'm not agreeing with. So where do we stop them?
So here's my suggestion, based on what Peter has said to us here today. That council direct me to bring back an appropriate plan for them to approve on the stages that we go through. And if there is some change in what I stated there, or I find some additional information, I'll bring it back at that time. And then council can approve what the plan is going forward. Because I would agree, we don't want the Taj Mahal, we want something that's functional.
And it has the space we need, not space we don't need. We need space for people that are working here, and we need space for council chambers. And we also need other facilities to meet Ministry of Labor standards.
That's
And we have to put all that together, but in the right way.
And the other thing we need to keep in mind is you could construct an extension such that you'd be able to expand that if you need it in the future. Like they can do that, the architects can do that, so we could do that. And so we had to keep that in mind as well. So I think if council asked me to do that and bring it back, and council says, okay, let's go ahead with this plan. We can have it such that each step comes back to council for approval. I don't see anything wrong with that. We're moving the yardsticks, we're moving forward.
And I think that makes sense, and I know my own I had one suggestion, but I've spoken to the CAO about that briefly, was basically go back to the same old story about costs. It's not just a matter of building what we can afford per se, it's a matter of building what we actually need. But it would be really nice, because right now, even the report basically talks about the fact we just don't have enough information to get actual real costs, and everybody's doing all this guessing, including myself, and that doesn't work for us. So we need a, like, I think the CEO has suggested, is we need a direct staff to start the process to bring some more information back to us, so that we can actually have, whether we have a special meeting or whatever, to discuss this whole issue, which is a major issue, is to actually decide what we really think makes the most sense and what we absolutely have to do and what we want to go ahead with.
I also think that this project fits with the highway project, that fits with the property next door. There's a whole lot of good that can come out of this. And that's why, having a plan and taking it one piece at a time makes a lot of sense. Because in the intervening between the old parts of it, other things are going to happen.
And one of our discussions we had one day, did you mention to me, or am I getting my subject matter mixed up, that there is even a possibility there's some NOHFC funding that we may be able to leverage on part of the project, never mind the highway and stuff and all the rest?
Yeah, and so that comes off the highway. So we've already got an NHFC state one approval. They don't know what all the details are. So some of the stuff at the front of our property, like electronic sign, collectibles, that type of thing, they may be eligible for NHFC, and that's going to come in 80 or 90%. So that would reduce our costs.
And environmental considerations.
Yes, yes.
Anything that
There's
we
gonna be, we'll probably see some kind of a funding come out from the federal government with respect to climate change and trying to reduce the footprint of buildings and whatnot, and that might be one to enforce as well.
Yes, Councilman.
Yes, your worship, to our CEO. So when I look at the ONR, when we're impinging on there, what impact does that have on any compliance?
Well, right now, nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. and
So if that became an issue with them, can we have access via like another driveway?
So that was a good question. And so we engaged MTO very early on in our discussion with the highway. And they know that we're going to be looking at, an entrance. Now, the problem they have right now, or that we have, is that the reason why we use the entrance where it is because when you go onto Highway 11, you get that curve, they don't like that. They will not allow an entrance near that for obvious reasons.
So we have to be down the road.
Yeah, we'd be looking further down the highway, right, for that, which is fine. We'll just have to play by ear, but at least they're already engaged with us.
And I know when I went, just for council's information, I did attend the Highway 11 team meeting in Lister. And actually, I've got to follow up between myself and Chris. We had to follow up because they were supposed to actually come up here and meet with us to discuss entrances. Not only those entrances, but some other commercial properties that we've talked about that we may require entrances to make them more practical and feasible. And they were supposed to come up and meet with Chris and look at these options. So it's all part and parcel of this whole project. So I guess So we actually have a resolution on the floor that,
Your worship, if I could.
yeah,
I have one more thing too, and that is, then to know on the highway portion, I did raise the opportunity of having a stoplight there. Because I believe that that would help slow down traffic and be a lot safer for people crossing the highway. They didn't push back, but then after that, I started thinking, roundabout would be kind of cool there too. And so, people would think, well, what about the big trucks? The big trucks have no problem in anything around about. If you go to, the highway that goes into Collingwood, it's a provided highway, and they've got a whole bunch of those roundabouts, and they work great. Now, I don't know about snow plowing and stuff, how that works.
there's one in Ottawa, that's pretty tight in my mind, and it works.
Yeah, there is one.
On Highway 17.
Yeah, so there are some options there that we should probably keep open.
Yes, Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last time we spoke about this was in the basement of the library. We had the presentation from
J.L. Richards.
J.L. Richards. And as much as I want room and compliance for the staff, I said we need to redo the design.
Mhm.
But speaking earlier into our business carrying forward, I said, let's meet. And we never have met. I have ideas, I'm sure. Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we all have ideas, but we can't sit here tonight and banter about for 2 hours drawing in the back of us. Package here.
Councilor Grant, could I suggest then that we do something with a resolution to direct Chris to come back with some more information for us? And once we have enough information to get us rolling, that we can actually have a special meeting to actually discuss this project.
Yeah, I just don't want to get too far into a topographical survey where you're gonna do 700 feet in each way when we're only gonna build a 20 by 20 building. We're spending money that we don't need to, right? We need to be more specific, so I don't want to go spending money that we don't need to.
No, exactly.
So can we do something with this resolution at the same time? And then direct the CEO to come back with some information? And then before it gets into the final stages of that information, that we can have that special meeting and work on a real plan.
Maybe we could do both at the same time. I'll do the report. And we can have a special meeting for it. We can deal with the report, and then we can deal with what's been saying as well.
So we either defer this.
We must defer it, because you want me to write the report, right?
Okay, so, but this is accepting their report, right?
No, the motion doesn't say accepting their report. It's also, you're also providing
Staff direction.
that staff direction based on the recommendation. So it sounds like there needs to be a motion to amend.
Yeah, the only thing I'm looking for is for council to direct me to do the report, not for approval of it. Let's get the report for the process.
So we'll let Cass, we need an amendment to this resolution. Yes, Councilor.
I'll make the amendment, but again,
I need a seconder for that. Councilor Diamond. Yes, Cass.
I'm gonna be honest, I got lost in the conversation, so no, I did. So what you-
Chris will fill you in with what you need.
No, I need it for the motion. You need to know what you're voting
That's
on.
what I'm saying.
Okay, so then what's the report? Because I have council director CEO to bring back a report. That's what I'm
Right, so the report is gonna be based on the co-creative consulting letter of July 31. And it's gonna be a report from me to council on recommendations and how to proceed on the recommendations included in the letter. All right, how we're gonna do that? Come up with a plan.
Okay.
Was I? Sorry.
It's pretty general, but at least it gives you, there's a motion in play, it gives you some direction.
I'm gonna beat you there.
Okay, so I have a,
It'll be good, Cass. I'm sure.
I don't know.
It'll be just fine.
Okay, sorry, the mover was Councillor Neil. Who was the seconder for that?
Councilor Diamond. For the amendment, that's what we'll go ahead.
Well, this is actually, there's a whole new motion. This is not even an amendment. So can we, council, can we remove just for, just to uncomplicate this? So the first motion that was tabled, can we just get majority consent that you've removed that first motion from the table?
Yes.
Great,
I see a majority.
yes,
I see basically everybody.
okay. So now that's not, no longer an amended motion, this is now a main motion, okay? Moved by Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Diamond, that council direct the CAO to bring back a report based on the creative consulting report and how to move forward with those recommendations. Is that?
That's
did I
pretty
catch
well
it?
made sense. A plan to move, but
It should have been written as far as based on the recommendations,
Yeah, that might be more appropriate.
based on the recommendations by that agency.
Recommendations.
Yeah, by the,
Yeah, I have the creative consulting report part in it.
and then you did your creative writing, so you can fix it tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a resolution. I think that basically works for now anyway, and I'll call for a vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution? Seeing no objections, carried. And that's the next, then we're going into, we get no other business. I guess we're gonna be going into close. So we got a resolution for that?
Yes.
Need a mover and a seconder to move into close? I got Councillor Schmidt and Councillor Gallagher.
Was moved by Councillor Schmidt, seconded by Councillor Gathering, that council now comes into a portion of the meeting that shall be closed to the public at 8:35 PM. In accordance with section 239 subsection 2 of the municipal act to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition of disposition of land by the municipality or local board and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board's employee. So section 239 subsection 2C regarding an offer to purchase 1175 Highway 11 South. And section 239 subsection 2B regarding legal matters concerning staff.
All those in favor of the resolution going into close? Seeing no objections, carried. So